Get out of my hospital. People like you don't belong in a place like this." She didn't move. She stood in the middle of the corridor in her plain wool coat and her sensible shoes, and she didn't move an inch. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The administrator stepped closer, voice dropping to something that thought it was quiet but wasn't. "This is a private wing. Donor families and board members only. If you need the public waiting area, it's on the second floor." "I know where the waiting area is," she said. "I've been in this building since it was a blueprint. Security." He didn't even look at her when he said it. Just raised his hand, 2 fingers, like he was flagging a waiter. She looked at him then. Really looked. And something in her expression, not anger, something older and quieter than anger, made the nearest security guard slow his walk before he even reached her. That was the moment nobody in that corridor understood yet. They thought they were watching a woman about to be removed. They had no idea who she was, or what was already in motion. 3 hours earlier, the morning had looked like any other morning at Hartwell Medical Center. The hospital sat at the edge of downtown Calgary, all glass and pale limestone, the kind of building that photographed well for fundraising brochures. Inside, the Ashford private wing gleamed on the 6th floor. Private rooms, dedicated nursing staff, a concierge service that brought actual food instead of cafeteria trays. A place for the people who funded the building to be reminded, if they ever needed it, that their money was well spent. Fiona Beaumont arrived through the main entrance at 7:43 in the morning. She wore a charcoal wool coat, no jewelry except small pearl earrings, and carried a canvas tote bag with a broken zipper held shut with a binder clip. Her hair was silver and cut practically, the kind of cut that said she had better things to do than sit in a salon. She looked, to everyone who passed her in the lobby, like someone's retired schoolteacher, the kind of woman you hold the door for and then immediately forget. She stopped at the front desk and asked which room her brother was in. The clerk typed slowly, squinted at the screen. "Are you immediate family? I'm his sister. Is he expecting you?" Fiona looked at the young woman behind the desk. "He's in post-surgical recovery. He's not expecting anyone. He just had a triple bypass." The clerk typed something else, unhurried. "I'm going to need to see ID." Fiona produced her driver's license. The clerk looked at it, looked at her, looked at it again. "And the nature of your visit?" "He's my brother," Fiona said again very gently. "That's the nature." She was given a visitor pass and directions to the 6th floor. She rode the elevator up alone, tote bag over one shoulder, reading glasses tucked in her coat pocket. The Ashford wing had a different smell from the rest of the hospital. Less antiseptic, more like a hotel lobby, fresh flowers in a vase on the nursing station, carpet instead of linoleum, track lighting turned to something warm. A woman behind the desk looked up when Fiona stepped off the elevator. "Can I help you?" The tone that made it a statement, not a question. "Room 614. My brother, Owen Beaumont." "I'm Fiona." The nurse, her badge said Patricia, looked Fiona up and down with the particular efficiency of someone who had been doing this a long time and had decided, in the first 3 seconds, exactly what she was dealing with. "Visiting hours for this wing begin at 10, Patricia said. "It's 8 o'clock in the morning and my brother had open-heart surgery yesterday. Those are the wing's policies, ma'am." Fiona looked at her for a moment. "Who is the attending on his case?" "Dr. Renner. Is he in?" "He rounds at 9. I'll wait then." Fiona moved toward the seating area at the end of the corridor. There's a small cluster of chairs by a window overlooking the city. "Ma'am." Patricia's voice followed her. "This seating is for Ashford wing patients and their immediate families." Fiona turned around slowly. "I just told you. Owen Beaumont is my brother. I'm going to need more than your word for that. You have my ID. The wing has a protocol for unverified visitors." Patricia reached for the phone. "I'm going to call down to the main desk." "You do that," Fiona said. She sat down in one of the chairs and set her tote bag on the floor and folded her hands in her lap. And she waited. It was the same way she had waited in rooms her entire career. Courtrooms, board meetings, Senate hearings. Decades of being the woman in the sensible shoes that the room underestimated until she opened her mouth. She had learned a long time ago that the waiting wasn't defeat. It was the part where she gathered information. The wing's administrator arrived 11 minutes later. His name was Crawford Finch, and he wore a suit that was doing a lot of work to make him look important. He had the bearing of a man who had spent his career being the authority in rooms where nobody pushed back. He had not yet encountered a room where Fiona Beaumont pushed back. "Ma'am." He stopped in front of her. "I understand there's been a misunderstanding. Has there? This wing has specific protocols for visitor access. For the comfort and privacy of our patients, I'm aware of the protocols," Fiona said. "I sat on the committee that wrote them in 2019. Crawford's expression flickered, something recalculating behind his eyes. But he recovered quickly. He was practiced at recovering quickly. "Be that as it may," he said, "I'm going to need to verify your relationship to the patient before I can allow you access. I'm sure you understand." "I understand completely," Fiona said. "Who would you like to call?" He blinked. "Pardon, to verify. Who would you like to call?" "The nursing station has already confirmed I provided government ID. My brother's file lists me as his emergency contact. I'm happy to wait while you call whoever you need to call." She looked up at him. "Who do you have in mind?" He hadn't expected that. The people Crawford Finch removed from this floor usually argued or cried or demanded to speak with someone. They didn't offer to let him make calls. "I'll need to speak with Dr. Renner," he said, buying time. "He rounds at 9. I'll wait." She picked up the magazine from the side table and opened it. Crawford stood there for a moment, the authority deflating slightly. Then he cleared his throat. "In the meantime, I'd ask that you wait in the main lobby. I'm comfortable here. This seating area is for patients and their immediate families." She's turned a page. "Yes, I heard, Patricia." Crawford's jaw tightened. A couple of nurses at the far end of the corridor had stopped moving, but were very busy pretending they hadn't. "Ma'am." He stepped closer, dropping his voice. "I'm going to need you to come with me." "No," she said. "I beg your pardon?" She lowered the magazine and looked at him properly. She had the kind of eyes that had spent 40 years watching people in difficult moments, not unkindly, but without illusion. "Mr. Finch," she said, "my brother had surgery yesterday. I drove through the night from Vancouver to be here. I have provided identification. I am listed as his emergency contact. I am sitting in a chair by a window, causing no disruption whatsoever." She paused. "What specifically would you like me to do differently?" The question hung in the air. Crawford's face did something complicated. He was not accustomed to being asked to justify himself out loud, where everyone could hear the answer. "Policy," he said finally. Another pause. Longer this time. "Sir." It was one of the younger nurses, a man whose badge said Theo, who had been sorting charts 10 feet away and clearly not sorting charts at all. Her ID checked out. "She's on the emergency contact list. I looked it up after Patricia called down." Crawford turned to look at Theo with the expression of a man who would be having a very different conversation with him later. "Even so," Crawford said. "Even so what?" Fiona asked, pleasantly. Crawford straightened. He had run out of procedural ground, and they both knew it, so he did what men like Crawford do when they run out of procedural ground. He made it personal. "Let me be honest with you," he said. "This wing hosts some of the most prominent families in Alberta. Our patients expect a certain environment, a certain standard." He let his eyes move over her coat, her bag, the binder clip on the zipper. "We have to be thoughtful about who we allow into that space, I'm sure you understand." The corridor went very quiet. Theo had stopped pretending to sort charts. Patricia had gone very still at the nursing station. Crawford hadn't said it plainly. Men like Crawford never said it plainly, but it was there in every word. "You don't look like you belong here. You don't look like the kind of person we keep." Fiona was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Crawford, what's your supervisor's name?" "I am the administrator for this wing." "And who does the wing administrator report to?" "The hospital's chief operating officer." "And who does the CO report to?" He frowned. The board of directors," she said. "Yes." She reached into her tote bag, past the binder-clipped zipper, and produced a very plain business card. She held it out to him. "I'm the chair." The silence that followed was the kind that has a sound, a low, pressurized sound like something about to crack. Crawford took the card. He read it. He read it again. Fiona Beaumont, Chair, Board of Directors, Hartwell Medical Center Foundation. The card, no logo, no flourish, just her name, her title, and a phone number. Crawford's face went the color of old chalk. He started. "I don't need an apology right now," Fiona said, not unkindly. "I need to see my brother. Can you take me to room 617, or would you prefer I call Dr. Renner directly?" He took her to room 617. He walked 3 paces ahead and didn't say a word the entire way, which was fine. Fiona had spent her career in rooms that didn't want to look at her directly. She was used to the walk. Owen was awake, propped up against pillows, looking pale and thinner than she remembered. His face when he saw her in the doorway changed all at once, the way faces do when the person you most wanted to see walks in. "Fee," he said. "I know." She pulled a chair to his bedside and sat down and took his hand. "I drove all night. You look terrible. You look perfect," he said. "I look exactly like what I am." She squeezed his hand. "Rest. I'm not going anywhere." Crawford Finch did not come back that morning. He sent Patricia instead 90 minutes later to ask whether Mrs. Beaumont, Dr. Beaumont, as Theo had apparently looked up and informed the rest of the floor, needed anything. Coffee, a meal, a more comfortable chair. Fiona thanked Patricia and asked for tea. She said please. She said thank you when it came. She did not make a scene. She did not demand anything. She sat beside her brother while he slept and drank her tea and let the morning pass. But Theo had been watching. And Theo had a phone. The clip he posted that afternoon was 22 seconds long. It was shot from behind the nursing station, half obscured, the audio barely audible. But you could hear Crawford's voice clearly enough. "A certain standard. I'm sure you understand." And you could see Fiona, steady, unhurried, reaching into the tote bag with the broken zipper, and the moment Crawford read the card, the way he seemed to lose an inch off his height where he stood. The clip had 11,000 views by dinner. By midnight, it had been shared across 3 provinces. By the following morning, it had a headline. Hospital administrator tells board chair she doesn't look like she belongs in private wing. Then she shows him her card. The comments came in waves. People who had waited in wrong-side waiting rooms. People who had been told, in language that never quite said it directly, that they weren't the right kind. People who recognized the look on Crawford Finch's face, not the moment he said it, but the moment he understood what he had said, and to whom, and in front of how many witnesses. The hospital's communications office issued a statement by noon. Hartwell Medical Center is committed to equitable, respectful care for all patients and visitors. An internal review has been initiated. The internal review was not necessary to tell them what had happened. What had happened was Crawford Finch, and the morning caught on camera, and Fiona Beaumont sitting in a chair with a broken zipper on her bag, waiting, while the room decided what she was worth before it bothered to ask. The board met on Thursday. Fiona was there, as she was at every board meeting, at the head of the table in her usual seat. She had not asked for the meeting. She had not issued any statement or given any interviews. She had posted nothing. The other board members looked at her differently. Some of them, in the way people look at someone they thought they knew and are now recalibrating. Dr. Renner, who had heard the story from 3 different nurses by Tuesday, met her eyes when he came in and gave her a small, private nod. The board voted to accept Crawford Finch's resignation that morning. The motion passed without discussion. Finch himself had submitted it the previous evening. His lawyer had suggested it strongly. The new wing access policy, which Fiona had been quietly proposing for 2 years, passed at the same meeting. Emergency contacts listed in a patient's file would be granted immediate access, regardless of visiting hours, regardless of appearance, regardless of anyone's assessment of whether they looked like they belonged. The policy would be posted in the lobby, in the elevator, and at every nursing station in the building. Fiona didn't stand up when it passed. She just made a note in the margin of her agenda and moved to the next item. After the meeting, in the corridor outside the boardroom, a younger board member named Sandra caught up with her. "Fee," Sandra said, "how are you doing, after everything?" Fiona considered this. "Owen's coming home Friday," she said. "He's going to need someone to bother him about his diet for the next 6 weeks. I'm looking forward to it." Sandra laughed, a little surprised. "You're not angry?" Fiona thought about Crawford Finch in the corridor, about the way his eyes had moved over her coat, the words he had chosen, careful and plausible, and perfectly deniable, the way those words always are. "I've been angry," she said. "I spent a lot of years being angry." She picked up her tote bag, the zipper still broken, still held with the binder clip because she hadn't gotten around to replacing it. "This time I was just tired, and I wanted to see my brother." She said goodbye to Sandra and walked to the elevator. She pressed the button for the lobby. The doors opened, and she stepped in, and she rode down alone the way she had ridden up that morning, and she walked out through the main entrance into the sharp, clear Calgary air. The story kept moving without her. It would for a while. The clip, the headline, the policy change. People would talk about it on panels and in comment sections and in hospital boardrooms that were suddenly, quietly, reviewing their own visitor protocols. Fiona drove to the grocery store and bought soup ingredients and a get-well card with a bear on it that Owen would pretend to find embarrassing. She drove to the hospital, parked in the visitor's lot, walked in through the main entrance, and rode the elevator to the 6th floor. The nurse who greeted her at the Ashford wing desk that afternoon was not Patricia. It was Theo. "Dr. Beaumont," he said, and then, "I'm sorry for Tuesday. I should have said something sooner." She looked at him for a moment. He was young, early 20s maybe, the kind of young that still looked genuinely sorry when it was sorry. "You did say something," she told him, "when it mattered." He nodded, relieved. "Is my brother awake?" "He's been asking about you since 9 this morning," Theo said. He said, and I'm quoting, "Where's Fee? She promised me soup." Fiona smiled. It was a real smile, the kind that reached the corners of her eyes. "Tell him it's in the bag," she said, and she walked down the corridor, past the track lighting and the fresh flowers, past the nurses who looked up as she went, and then went back to their work, and she pushed open the door to room 614. Owen was sitting up higher than he'd been on Tuesday. There was more color in his face. He had the television on but the volume down, and when he saw her he reached for the remote and turned it off entirely. "You brought soup," he said. "I brought soup." She sat down. She set the bag on the floor. She started pulling out containers. "Tell me something," Owen said. "What?" "That thing with the administrator." Theo told me the whole story. He was watching her face. "Did it make you angry, the way he talked to you?" Fiona set a container of soup on the bedside tray. She thought about the corridor, the way Crawford Finch's eyes had moved, making their calculation before he even spoke. The weight of it, familiar and heavy, the kind of weight you carry until your shoulders just stop noticing it's there. "Yes," she said, "it made me angry." "Good," Owen said. "It should." She handed him a spoon. "It also made me think," she said, "that this happens to people every day in this hospital. People who don't have a card to pull out of their bag. People who just have to absorb it and go home." She looked at the window, at the Calgary skyline going gray in the late afternoon. "That's the part I keep thinking about." Owen was quiet for a moment. "Then the policy passed. It passed. You've been trying to get that through for 2 years. 2 years and 4 months, she said. "But who's counting?" He smiled at that. The television was off, and the room was quiet, and the soup was still warm, and outside the window the city did what cities do. Kept moving, kept going, carrying everyone in it whether they were noticed or not. Nobody could take that morning back. Not Crawford Finch with his lawyer and his resignation letter. Not Eleanor. Not the nursing station or the committee or the careful, deniable language that hadn't been careful enough. What had happened in that corridor had a record now. A public one. It was in the clip, in the headline, in the new policy hanging on the wall by the elevator, and it was in the quiet moment after the board vote, when Fiona had simply made a note in her margin and moved on. That, maybe, was the part worth remembering. Not the card. Not the title. Not the moment Crawford's face went pale. The part where she sat in a chair and waited. Where she didn't argue or cry or make herself smaller to make the room more comfortable. Where she just stayed, still and certain, and let the room come to its own conclusions. She had been doing that her whole career. Sometimes it took a Tuesday morning and a 22-second video for the rest of the world to catch up. Now, here's what I want to ask you. If you had been standing in that corridor, not knowing who Fiona was, not knowing about the card or the board or any of it, what would you have done? When Crawford set a certain standard and you heard what he meant underneath it, would you have said something? Or would you have looked away? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Velvet Honor for more stories about the quiet ones. The people who don't announce themselves, who don't need the room to know their name, and who change things anyway. Because the most powerful person in the room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes she's the one in the sensible shoes, holding a soup container and a get-well card with a bear on it, who already changed the policy before anyone knew her name.